Right now on Tech Radio, the EU says to big tech, no merci, no, no, no.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. This week, looking at the G7 meeting, saying that it's only a matter of time before AI outperforms humans. And that time span is a lot shorter than you might think. We're also looking at SpaceX, how that's doing on the stock exchange, and we give our verdict on the trailer of the new movie, The Social Reckoning. Plus, with our guest, Isabelle Roccia from the International Association of Privacy Professionals, we'll be chatting about the EU's plan to leave big tech behind.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me is our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson, to chat about all things tech for the week. G7, big political summit, but actually AI very much front and centre on this one. All the big names are there, and they asked a question no one ever asks. Who was there, firstly?
Yeah, well, of course, all the G summits tend to be quite interesting, if slightly obvious. It's always nice to see the people that are running our lives in the room, well, except for Ireland, but anyway, to get a sense that they're at least listening to the right people or listening to the science on various topics such as climate change. This time around, we had a series of guests visiting the G7. We had Sam Altman, Dario Amodi, Demis Hassabis from Google DeepMind. So that's OpenAI, Anthropic and Google DeepMind all represented. And they presented a vision that basically said, okay, 2 years' time, AI is going to be as good as people. This is going to present a lot of problems. It's going to force an awful lot of change. Let's talk about this, but also in the ether above it, there's the question of, and we'd like to know how you're going to stop us.
Okay, so now let me ask. Just to clarify, were they asking, how are you going to stop us? Why would they go in and ask, how are you going to stop us? Or were they asking for it to be regulated? Oh, hang on. I know what you mean now. They're going to go in and they're saying, this is the story. We want to know what it is you're going to do so that we can work around whatever regulations you're going to put in place. Is that it?
Oh, such a cynic. Basically, it's the standard thing of, we're moving fast, we're breaking things. We don't care what this stuff is actually going to get used for. It's up to you to put the guardrails in place. Now, Anthropic will say that's not quite the case. I mean, that's how they got into trouble with the US government and got labeled a supply chain risk, and how Anthropic's products are currently not for export from the US. So Anthropic is pretty throttled by the Trump administration at the moment. OpenAI, very different. Google DeepMind, also very different, but unified in the sense that, look, we've got this stuff going on. We're building it anyway. It's up to you guys to figure out how to regulate us effectively.
Ah, right. Okay, grand. So they want to know where are the goalposts, essentially, is what they're asking for. Because
well,
I think
know exactly where they are.
I think it's really interesting because, I mean, AI and at that political level, we are seeing, you just said Trump administration. Sorry, they are the government in the States, not a corporation. Sure. What a faux pas. However, yes, they are controlling what Anthropic are and are not allowed to export AI-wise, and particularly with who they're able to deal with for chips and all that kind of stuff. They're getting very involved, because what I'm hearing is that AI is going to be the dominant source in the future for a nation's economic and military power.
I think military is the most important part of that sentence.
And I think economic as well. Like, when you think about it, it used to be how many horses, how many soldiers did we have, how many can we knock over? And then it became tanks and guns and planes and stuff like that. We're now living in a cyber age where it's like, okay, well, can we use AI to knock out your power stations or blow up your nuclear power station on your own behalf?
Okay, well, here's a question then.
Yeah.
If, AI infrastructure and the capacity to, run AI is going to be such a definitive feature of successful economies in the future, does this mean we have an unprecedented amount of leverage in Ireland?
Absolutely not. Why would we have an unprecedented? We're a speck on the side of the Atlantic Ocean. Do you know what I mean? It's us and the Falkland Islands.
But I mean, hey, it's open season here if you want to make a data center. Not quite, but you get the idea. I mean, per capita, we've more data centers than anyone.
That's just tools. That's just things. Do you know what I mean? It's who controls the data centers, I think, is the important thing. And I think actually, do you know, when you look at AI as whoever controls that is going to be the economic and military force of the future, you can understand why all of the big organizations, OpenAI and Google and Microsoft, are putting so much money into AI, because whoever wins or is one of the top 3 leaders in that is set for the next 100 years and could do with the stuff that you only imagine a James Bond villain would do.
Well, I mean, we already have a James Bond villain and fairly transparent about what he wants to do. But I think there's a few interesting side notes to come with this story. During the week, there was a report by Ed Zitron. He's an AI commentator. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's getting more and more attention, but he's got an excellent newsletter called Where's Your Ed At, where he talks about all things AI from a very skeptical lens. And he found figures, and since verified by the Financial Times, that OpenAI made a loss of, well, they spent $39 billion in 2025. That's, you know, they're in the hole big time.
Yeah.
And they are looking to IPO as quickly as possible. They say they're not, but let's be real. At a valuation of $850 billion.
Yeah, you know, it sounds crazy, but I'm saying you need to think like 10 years ahead or 15 years ahead or whatever. And where will we be at that stage? That kind of money.
They can't afford to think that far ahead.
Well, yeah, I think they need to, and they need to think about what's going to happen in 2 years and 5 years.
If they are, then that's why they're you know fastballing this because
you look at a SpaceX or the 3 companies combined together, which are known as SpaceX, and what Elon was saying on that, he was saying, okay, look, we're looking to raise like $2 trillion or whatever it was. He wanted to get our value of the company. He says, but I reckon that the total market for what it is that we're doing will be $28 trillion in the future. And that's what he's definitely thinking 10 years ahead.
Well, yeah, he's thinking so far ahead that he'll either be dead by the time it reaches that value.
Yeah, but he won't care. A lot of those people, it's just the fact that they are building it and that it's a success. And if they're able to hand it on to their kids or whatever it is that they want to do.
Well, we can talk about SpaceX and the various structural weaknesses there in a little bit. But other side note on all things AI and regulation, the government has just published the Regulation of Artificial Intelligence Bill, which would bring Ireland into line with the EU AI Act, which of course came into force 2 years ago. So get this, there are 10 parts of the bill with 139 sections and 4 schedules. So that's the you know, the extent of the task that is in front of our government at the moment, just to bring us into line into Europe. And of course, part of that is the establishment of an AI office and all sorts. But yeah, G7 AI leaders showed up, said, you guys are in serious trouble.
Yeah. We need to be regulated. We need to be regulated. It's kind of like a kid walking into the kitchen going, Mom, I know where the chocolate is. You need to hide it.
You need to hide it better.
You need to hide it better. Really great reporting this week on Sky from a journalist called Roland Manthorpe, right? He's been looking at AI and how far it's come and where it's going to be in the next 2 years. And what he's coming up with is quite stunning. What he said was Mozilla do a regular thing where every month they check bug fixes and all that kind of stuff, right? And maybe 2 years ago, they were getting something like 30 bug fixes a month, all right? Mythos has come along and it's 10 times the fixes that it's able to do.
Wow.
In a month, all right? So they went from fixing 30 things to 300. Unbelievable. Yeah. There's another organisation called the AI Security Institute who are based in London, and they run a test which simulates the takeover of a company network. All right. Very interesting that anybody would do this. 18 months ago, when they ran the test on this, kind of a test company, if you like, the AI was able to get in and look around and see what the structure of the company network was. All right. Nothing more than that. 3 months ago, the AI was able to get in and escalate privileges for itself.
So it could go from being a viewer to an editor, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And make changes. The most recent run they've done on the test, which is this month or today, if you want to look, Mythos can take over the network.
Wow. So it can set everybody's permissions if it so wished.
It can do what it wants, you know, and the worst thing is that if it gets in and it does something subtle, do you know what I mean? Where nobody actually notices, but the changes are happening. Do you know, that's the way I do it anyway. So that is kind of like, wow. And the other point he was making was because it has this power, this is why Anthropic and, the US authorities and stuff like that and the Trump Corporation are restricting access to it. But his point is that the open source market is never that far behind AI. It might be 6, 9, maybe 12 months, and particularly the Chinese, so DeepSeek and those kind of things. So if that's where it is today now, and they're trying to lock it down, in 12 months' time, we're most likely going to have an open source version, which is just as powerful. And open source means it's available to anyone. And anyone includes malintents and cyber criminals.
A lot of bad actors out there.
Exactly. So interesting times that we're going
to... I mean, for every force, there's a counter force. So, antivirus stuff will get much smarter as well. So it's not, the pendulum swings both ways. I think we're going to get much smarter and much better security software as well.
That's true. Dying to find out about this new movie that you have found and tell us about it. But first, a quick note on Anthropic. They're being taken to court. And this is something that affects us all, right? I don't know if you use Claude very much, but I find now I have had the Pro and then I wasn't using it that much because I'm not coding so much. So I went back onto the free. But I noticed now with the free, I literally have to put in one prompt. And that's it. I'm done for the day. It goes, oh no, you've used up all your tokens for, try again in 5 hours. It's like, annoying, right?
Yeah.
There's a guy who bought the Max package, all right? And he is having the same problem, all right? Now, he uses it a lot. Even people who use it a lot will probably look at him and go, man, you're using it a lot. But nevertheless, right? He is taking Anthropic to court because they are not specifying how much use he is getting with his Max package. It's cost him like $100 a month or something like that, right? And all that Anthropic will tell you is they go, well, we have our free tier, all right? Then if you buy the Pro package, then you get 5 times more usage than the free tier. Or if you buy the Pro Max or the Max package, you get 20 times more than the free tier. But they don't actually define either what the free tier is or how many tokens it is. It's just kind of like you'll get 5 times more usage than our free users do. So that's all you know.
If they decide that, tomorrow's free users get twice what they did today or half what they did today, you're stuck with the proportions.
Yeah. And then what they could do is they could vary the amounts then during the day. So if it gets busy, they can bring down that amount. So he's kind of going, because they are not quantifying it and it's such a variable and you don't even know what the variable is, that he is taking them to court. And I think he's going to try with a class action suit as well. So
he's going to need some friends to make this happen.
We shall wait and see. Listen, tell me about The Social Reckoning. It reminds me of the movie The Social Network, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, released in 2010, if you can believe that. I mean, that was a long time ago, yeah. At the time, I was adamant that it should win Best Picture. It lost out to The King's Speech, which, in fairness, I eventually watched, and it is a great film in its own right as well. But The Social Network, David Fincher's one of his best films, I think. With a fantastic script by Aaron Sorkin, who at the time wasn't a Facebook user, didn't have an account, but he knew people. And as a result, we got a really excellently realized human story with some absolutely cracking dialogue as well, and some wonderful characterizations. I thought Jesse Eisenberg did an absolutely stellar job as a Mark Zuckerberg, or a young Mark Zuckerberg, as we can say now. So up to the time of Social Network, I think it covered the case Eduardo Saverin, one of Zuckerberg's co-founders, brought against him over basically Saverin's share of Facebook was diluted when other investors and Zuckerberg's was not. Saverin took him to court. There was a settlement, and forever after, Saverin's name is listed as it being a co-founder of Facebook. And an absolutely wonderful performance by Eisenberg. As I said, he just had this slightly detached quality to him throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And now we are getting not a sequel, a companion piece called The Social Reckoning. And this looks at the period of time around Zuckerberg's testimony to Congress a couple of years ago in relation to the whistleblower Frances Haugen's work, her of the Facebook files, and my person of the year, my Tech Radio person of the year 2021. So I'm feeling no small amount of validation here, let me tell you. So basically what had happened was that Haugen had, the way it's framed in the trailer is that she's saying, I don't want to destroy the company. I want it to be better. And if this is the way that we make it better, this is how we do it. There are things that the company is doing that are unethical, that they know are unethical, and they're not going to stop unless they're held to account. So she approaches a journalist from the Wall Street Journal, and she talks about how the company prioritized policy over safety, and sort of it culminates, I think it culminates anyway, in testimony. Now, Mark Zuckerberg this time is played by the gentleman from Succession. What's his name? Jeremy Strong, is it?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Jeremy Strong.
Yeah.
And he looks, he's older than Zuckerberg, right? So he doesn't have that, but the casting is genius in that it externalizes the rot that is set into Zuckerberg at this stage. I mean, he looks older, the hair is spot on, the voice is amazing. But yeah, it's very much sort of, it's casting that's meant to make you look at him and go, I really hate this guy. Like, I really hate him.
Do we really need to do that?
He went from this sort of fresh-faced kind of, a bit quirky, but, ultimately, not great with people, but, he had a plan and he brought it to, to fruition, and you got to respect that. But you look at this guy and he's like a ghoul. It's just very easy to hate him. And that just sort of steers you in that direction that, this isn't this is actually a much more clear-cut battle between good and evil than you might expect it to be.
That'd be interesting.
So it's an absolutely brilliant trailer, and it culminates in 3 or 4 notes from the original Social Network soundtrack. You've seen it. What do you make?
I thought it was very interesting. You're right. Mark Zuckerberg does look older and very ghoulish. What a great word for describing the actor and the look. I think it will be quite an interesting story. I don't know if it'll be as interesting as The Social Network, but I am absolutely going to go see that when it's released in October.
Yeah, bit of a ways to go. I mean, there's some Marvel movies and stuff between now and then, and Dune to look forward in December.
Blockbusters. Also on Meta and Facebook, not a happy place at the moment, no?
No, absolutely not. Apparently, morale, particularly among the engineering team, is what has been described as an all-time low. A couple of things have happened recently. One is the AI engineers are basically doing something called data labeling. Now, they're not actually building anything. They're just editing repositories on GitHub. It's fairly soul-crushing work. They're not happy. Also, Meta's AI for Work head of product, Emily Dalton-Smith, left earlier this week. Just an example of how important this woman is. She left and the share price went down nearly 6%.
Wow. On that one woman leaving.
Wow. Now, what would you guess a share in Facebook or share in Meta will cost you these days?
Oh, I haven't looked in. I don't know how long. anything related to Facebook. Go on.
$567.58 at time of recording.
Wow.
The company is worth $1.4 trillion overall. And this is a company that just does not seem to excite anyone, that people seem generally very unhappy with. And yet it's worth this much. It's crazy. Markets divorced from reality. But a wonderful line in the trailer. We are post-government. if that's what they think they are.
Yeah. Speaking of the stock market and shares, of course, we had SpaceX last week doing its thing. How is it doing today?
Do you know what? I don't want to say we were doom and gloom, but we were skeptical, and, we were looking at, the game has been rigged for this to be a successful IPO. Rules have specifically been changed to make sure this IPO is successful. And you know what? It's been doing okay so far. Now, we'll talk into sort of how the rule changes have really affected it. But if you bought in at $135, right now they're trading at $191.82. So that's far above the initial offering. The IPO was 4 times subscribed. So, significant amounts of people did not get shares that wanted to. But also remember these rule changes. So the first one, and we can sort of just breeze through this because it's not terribly relevant at the moment. It's getting fast entry into the NASDAQ Top 100 index funds. So this is the sort of thing that pension funds invest in, that kind of thing. It used to be a 3-month period. Now it's down to 15 days. And the reason it was 3 months was because it's just to give the share a chance to prove itself, to prove its valuation. When you are one of the highest valued companies in the world, you are going in there at the top, assuming you are actually the real deal. That's what this 3-month period was for. It was reduced down to 15 trading days. Thus far, things seem to be going okay. You also remember we were talking about a free float of shares that have to be available for purchase and sale at any one point. It used to be around 10%. SpaceX has a free float of 4.3%. The reason this was changed is because we now have a free float multiplier, right, of 3 times your actual floating shares. So as you gave the result, the example a couple of weeks ago, a ticket for the cinema is €15. You rock up with a fiver, they say, yeah, and you go. That's exactly what SpaceX has done. It's manufactured this sense of scarcity. It's propped up the share price. We're still in a honeymoon period. This is great. Also important, no rug pulls. Nobody cashed out very quickly. So people are taking the long run on it. But also bear in mind, this is all a bet on Elon Musk. If something were to happen to Elon Musk tomorrow, this, it's very bad news for an awful lot of people. I mean, he has 85% of the votes. So whatever he says goes. It's basically it. So what is, to make the same reference, what is the line of succession here if something goes wrong?
It all goes to Mark Zuckerberg and Donald Trump. It'll be fine. Don't worry.
Be grand. So that's where we are at SpaceX. Thus far, a good bet.
All right. Finally on money. Apple. Oh my God. Tim Cook is, I think Tim Cook is taking one for the team with this, right?
Okay.
Basically, he was in an interview with the Wall Street Journal during the week and said that, the price of RAM has gone up so much, Ramgate, this, that, and the other, and it's all very expensive. So it just means that we're trying to protect our customers as much as possible, but it's too much. It's too much now. The price of RAM means that the price is going to have to go up even more.
Apple talking
products.
About the price of RAM is ridiculous.
Yes.
We all know this. If you try to upgrade the RAM on an Apple product forever, not now, but since forever, it has been remarkably, woefully overpriced.
Massively overpriced. 200 quid to double for an extra 8 gigs of RAM. It's ridiculous. Here's a fact that came up, right? Apple as a company is worth $4.35 trillion. Okay. Wow. So if you got that, $4.35 trillion. Okay. Yeah. Apple could give every living person in the United States of America an iPhone worth $1,000 and they would still have $4 trillion left.
And the scale of these things is just mind-boggling.
I want to tell him where he can ram his RAM, but I won't.
That's reasonable.
Listen, last story before we get into our interview this week. As expected, the UK has greenlit. It's pushed the button. It's definitely going to ban social media for kids.
Yeah, second time of asking. You might remember there was a vote in April about a potential ban on social media, and it got through the House of Lords but failed in the Commons, possibly along party lines. But the idea at the time was that it would take, we'll introduce a ban on social media, but there'll be a 12-month grace period at which we identify the main platforms involved. And I suppose that didn't go in its favour either, because we already know what platforms are at fault with these things. We're looking at WhatsApp, we're looking at Facebook, we're looking at Instagram, we're looking at TikTok. Yeah. Who else are we looking at? YouTube.
All the usual suspects. Yeah.
The usual suspects. There's nothing new there. The plan is to, it's under 16s, which is, some countries in Europe have gone with 15s, and some are on a faster timeline than others. France wants to get theirs in place in time for the new school year in September. The UK, they reckon it'll be spring 2027. Now, there's two other things that I found I hadn't come across in some of the other bans, and that's a potential curfew on social media, which I think, again, it's the sort of thing parents should be doing, but possibly aren't. I know a lot of people that are very good at locking down their kids' phones are going, okay, bedtime, give me your phone, that kind of thing. But an actual digital curfew, and okay, a ban on infinite scrolling for the under 18s. How that is going to happen in reality, I don't know. I just don't know. But here's the thing, right? We had Chirp on couple of months ago. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant project. It was Rena Maycock, and she was talking about how their solution works at the level of firmware, right? Works at Android. It's not an app; it's built into the phone, right? And what they do is they monitor data that's going in, but also going out. So if you're on a website you shouldn't be at, you can't get that content. Sorry. But also, if you're trying to send something that's inappropriate, you can't send it either. Right. So this is a brilliant solution for cyberbullying. This is a great solution for kids that accidentally click on something they shouldn't. It's a good solution for kids that click on things that they shouldn't, but they want to. So I think it's a great solution. And, I think it's the sort of thing that countries should be looking at more than they are looking at things like, okay, we'll just let them cull accounts when we know the kids are just reopening new accounts, and they're finding ways to get around things like image verification. So I don't know. The question is always enforceability. Keir Starmer made a very good point that, cigarettes are bad for you. Kids still manage to get cigarettes. Does that mean we unban them? No. Alcohol is bad for kids. We have a ban on it for a reason. Kids still find a way to get drink. Does that mean we unban it? No. I think, I think these are reasonable counterpoints. Well, what do you think, Dusty?
It's a basic a cornerstone of parenting is that you tell them that they can't do things because basically you just don't want to make it easy for them. That's as simple as that. If you put some kind of roadblocks or whatever, if you want to stop anybody doing anything, if you put roadblocks in the way, because human beings are inherently lazy, most people go, oh, bother then. It's like me, I needed to lose weight. Just a little. Like, I'm not a fat, I don't think I am.
You're doing okay, Dusty. You're doing okay.
But anyway, my way around it was I just stopped buying chocolate when I was doing the weekly shop. That was it. So just having those roadblocks in place it's a very easy way to do it. Anyway, there you go. There's the UK making the social media ban official. And as you say, other EU countries will be following suit. The status here in Ireland, the government has said that they're not going to do anything individually. What they want to do is they want to follow EU legislation. So if and whenever
no trend setting here. Thank you very much.
No trend setting here. And in some ways, it'll just make things a wee bit easier for them. Do you know what I mean? Because whatever's agreed with all of the other 26 much bigger countries, we'll just go along with it. You know, and particularly for Ireland, because it's politically sensitive, because if we start putting in a social media ban and then Facebook gets uppity about it, who does so much business here, do you know what I mean? You can see like it's a little bit politically sensitive. Whereas if they kind of go, but it's an EU thing, what can I do? You know, it's not me. It's not me. Anyway, there we go. Listen, that's the news for this week. Now, as always, thanks for keeping us up to date.
Delivering Irish tech news since 2006. This is Tech Radio.
We talked earlier in the episode about the EU's effort to disengage from big tech as we know it. The EU's tech sovereignty package consists of a new Chips Act, an open source strategy, and a roadmap for digitisation and AI in energy. During the week, Niall Kitson spoke with Isabelle Roccia, Managing Director for Europe at the International Association of Privacy Professionals, to learn about the challenges that come with reducing our reliance on Silicon Valley.
It's kind of the eternal struggle in all things tech. When you look at the US and you look at the EU, there's this constant playoff between the US being pro-business and the EU being much more pro-consumer. Is that an opinion you share?
So I think there's some truth to that statement. We've seen in the past 2 decades, at least, some developments from the EU powers into a lot of regulatory approach that are very much human-centric, that are really looking at a consumer protection approach first. But it would be, I think, restrictive to look only at that. The EU has also been pushing for that more competitiveness, industrial type of approach for quite some time as well. And so I think the tech sovereignty package is one illustration of that developing over the years.
And I think we had seen very recently sort of an exchange of lessons, really, that Europe was sort of eyeing up what was happening in the States, and particularly in relation to AI, where we're quite a bit behind. But the States was also looking at things like GDPR and applying them in the States, most notably in California. Now, we're kind of in this, I'll call it coin-operated stage of American politics, where big tech is pretty much let do whatever it wants, so long as it's contributing to the right people. That option really isn't there in Europe. So from a policy perspective, how do we sort of address this issue of companies just maybe not being interested in being compliant with EU regulations?
So Europe has been always building its vision around protecting values and really anchoring doing business in Europe in respect of values such as privacy, such as consumer protection, such as transparency. I think we've seen certainly some pretty important development in the US as well around those values in recent years. You mentioned privacy legislation in the US, which I believe we're reaching 20 states probably by now that have a privacy legislation in place. So it's been significant change as well in the US. I think with respect to Europe, privacy was probably one of the first areas back in 1995, and then 10 years after that with the General Data Protection Regulation that really anchored a lot of its digital rulebook into a privacy thinking. But that has evolved as well, where now we're looking at the EU rulebook as touching across many, many different domains. Cybersecurity certainly has been a big part of that. Online safety, competition, you name it, copyright, obviously AI being one of the most recent, sort of a more flamboyant example of that. So there has been a real ballooning of those rules here, but they've indeed been largely anchored in what the GDPR and privacy rules have set up as a building block.
That really has been the primary battleground, really, hasn't it? I mean, when you're looking at data, I mean, it's inextricable from the issue of privacy as well. And perhaps that was maybe a source of pushback from the States, is the idea of having to anonymize data or use data that has been treated in some way, where, they can't go down into the sort of the granular level that maybe a product might want, but certainly a user hasn't consented to having their personal information used that way. So let's have a look at what the EU is dealing with at the moment in terms of this new framework. So I suppose challenge one is that Europe is pretty good at regulating, and GDPR was an excellent example of what can be done. But it's a problem that was addressed over many years and over many revisions. This package is much more ambitious, and it covers so many more technologies. So tell us a little bit about what's involved.
Yeah, so indeed, and I think what came out last week under this tech sovereignty package is significant for a number of reasons. However, it's not necessarily new fully. I think what we're seeing last week is probably 20 years in the making, in particular with the piece that looks at cloud in the Cloud and AI Development Act. There are 4 different pieces to the tech sovereignty package. The CHIPS Act 2.0, which is an update of the CHIPS Act that was already in place for a couple of years. Allegedly, some of the ambitions that were set out in the beginning were not exactly met, hence pushing for a second version of that rules. The Cloud and Development Act, and that's where probably there is more to say in terms of what's at stake and what are some of the potential friction points in what the Commission is proposing. An open source strategy and a strategic roadmap for digitalization and AI in energy. Those two are obviously important, but perhaps less relevant in the conversation today. But I think when we look in particular at CADA, or Cloud and AI Development Act, this really builds on previous attempts that, again, I think date back to easily 15 to 20 years around the idea of setting up European cloud infrastructure, Gaia X more recently, which was another attempt at building sovereign cloud. So again, that's why I'm saying it's not a surprise. What is perhaps more noteworthy is the fact that the EU proposing this makes a political statement. It means that there is enough alignment among authorities, political authorities and others, to really set a course and a strategic vision on what should be the priorities. And I think the objectives that are laid down are pretty fair and laudable political objective, right? When you talk about improving resilience, building more capacity locally, encouraging the development of homegrown tech stack, I mean, that's what is expected of policymakers in large part. I think part of the debate is going to be a lot harder on how do we actually make that happen? What are some of the conditions that will be expected for meeting those objectives? And so that's where I think we will see a number of challenges and really interesting discussions in the months to come, because again, what came out last week is a proposal that will have to be negotiated. It will probably change between now and what will effectively be into place when the time comes.
One of the aspects of the package I find particularly interesting is looking at the idea of scale. Previously, when we look at scaling and particularly data centers across Europe, it's agnostic. You're just assuming that you're serving an entirely global market. If we are working to this sort of paradigm of infrastructure sovereignty, of data sovereignty, etc., you are much better able to assess your infrastructure needs if you're only going to deal with countries within the EU 27, for example, because you know the highest standards will be applied to that. Do you think, this package could serve as providing an excellent roadmap of the amount of digital infrastructure we will actually need to make sure that we don't overbuild, which is something that is quite a possibility in the States, and even in Ireland as well, where an awful lot of our electricity, a disproportionate amount of our electricity, is being used by data centers. Do you think maybe that's a good balancing influence we could have?
So I think there's definitely a value in having a framework like that, in providing indeed a roadmap and a benchmark against which you know what you need to develop, the requirements that you need to meet. A few months ago, it was the internal IT department of the European Commission that rolled out a cloud framework that was sort of in large part announcing some of what the technology sovereignty package is about, which was laying out some criteria for cloud procurement. So I think from a provider standpoint, it's useful to be able to benchmark yourself against some of those criteria. That provides a bit more clarity, perhaps, than having goalposts moving depending on who's the customer, which member states it sits in, and that. So I think indeed to that extent it might be helpful. You talk about the risk of overbuilding. I see perhaps another potential pitfall, which will there be enough? Is there going to be a pace issue? Is there going to be an availability issue? I think some of the criteria that are laid out in CADA from a sovereignty requirement perspective are meant to be leading to a selective process, right? It's meant so that not every cloud service provider out there can bid for the public procurement contracts that are coming out. But does that guarantee that there is enough service providers out there currently that would actually meet those criteria as laid out? And I think part of what the EU is betting on is, to the extent that may not be the case, public procurement will inevitably help them emerge. And so in the long run, we'll see a response organically coming out to respond to the need for public procurement, again, avoiding that availability issue. But I think there may be an uncomfortable period during which it will be a question of whether there's enough companies in Europe that meet those requirements enough to respond to the needs out there.
That is certainly the problem, all right, because one of the pillars of the package is sort of a move towards more open source software. If you're used to using, a very widely used proprietary software like Microsoft, for example, just to take an example out of the ether, and all of a sudden you're told, well, do you know what? You're moving to an open source alternative, which comes with an entirely different, well, not entirely different, but certainly a different set of concerns, particularly around security and development. So not only are you moving providers, you're actually going to have to perhaps change your mindset in how you look at procurement as well. So what kind of supports do you think should be there for organizations that are thinking, well, we're actually doing what we're doing in a very comfortable manner? How do we deal with this pain that's coming down the road?
So I think, first of all, sort of keeping an eye on the negotiations that are coming on this to understand where the chips might fall in the future. That's definitely something that will be useful to do. I think the second thing is, as I look through those proposals, there are a number of requirements that in my mind are absolutely core functions of a governance team or your compliance teams or your cybersecurity team. So I think looking at already trying to map where you may see some requirements that will directly impact how your service is servicing your customer, or vice versa. If you're a customer, what are the implications as you look at your supply chain? I think that's already perhaps a helpful thing to start to do. Just to give a couple of examples, in some of the assurance level, even in level 1 or 2, there are some conditions around limiting storage of data, including telemetry data, metadata within the EU. Is that something that is already in your practice? Maybe it isn't. So that's something that would potentially need to change. There are some strong limitation to, again, sort of transfer of data outside the EU as a result. So how are your transfer mechanisms? Like, are you like purely and fully in compliance on that? What is your data governance program? Is it supporting those kind of objectives? So there is a couple of things like that I think will be pretty important and pretty practical implications. And then there are some areas in the proposals that will very likely be debated. And so it's hard to say right now where the chips may fall. One of the terms used in the proposals is talking about commercially sensitive data, and the fact that that type of data may require certain levels of assurance. It may be that different member states will define that differently. So we may still see some not a fully single market in that sense, but we may still see different requirements between member states because their public procurement authorities may define some of those terms differently. So I think there's also not necessarily a promise of having a totally harmonized single market in Europe. So I think companies may still feel some of that friction, even with some of the requirements being meant to support the emergence of local players and try to have some harmonization of criteria around the board. So I think those different elements to me will be important to measure, and again involving compliance and governance teams early on as we start to see more clearly what that may look like in practice will be really, really important, because the implementation of some of those changes will be on their shoulders.
Kind of the last battleground, or rather the fourth pillar in the tech package, is the strategic roadmap for digitalization and AI in energy. And returning to the point about energy that we had before with data centers, energy really is going to be such a strong interconnective tissue between all the EU member states as AI rolls out. Do you think this is going to be sort of the next data? Energy will be the next data in terms of managing Europe's digital strategy?
It's certainly a very important part of the discussions, both politically, technologically, from a commercial standpoint. We see some member states, like France, for example, has been pitching quite aggressively the country as a welcome territory for AI companies because it has invested so much into nuclear power energy, for example. And so that can be a very attractive proposition. We see the backflip of that being there's at times public outrage, or at least public questioning of this kind of activity, because how does it sit with otherwise the sustainability objectives that are also equally important in the public debate? So we do see that friction. It is significant, I think, that the EU is seizing this energy question, because it is one that will inevitably be really important in making a successful AI uptake in Europe. I think it also needs to happen along the side of other priorities, which are not part of the tech sovereignty package, but that the EU leadership is also working on and will be really important, is access to capital, changing some of the laws around access to financing, making sure that you have this culture of failing is not the end of the world. So there's a lot of other elements that I think will be important to the success of what the Commission and EU is looking to achieve there. But certainly looking at the energy part of it is really, really important. It's going to be a big part of it, making that happen.
I think what's really important there, and perhaps a good place to wrap up the conversation, is having the sense that this is not a product of over-regulation. This is about creating an ecosystem and identifying the needs of Europe and providing supports, as opposed to defining what those supports should be.
Right, and it's running in parallel of another effort that was launched last year when the current European Commission took office. There is this very famous now report from Mario Draghi that was essentially saying, look, if Europe wants to be competitive, it needs to revisit its rule book. Many of its instruments, including the GDPR and the digital world, are too complex, too burdensome, and while it's important, obviously, to protect fundamental rights and protect personal data, it creates too much friction for business and innovation and competitiveness. So the Commission is also under some pressure to deliver on that simplification agenda. And that conversation is not going perhaps as easily as the Commission would hope. That's true in the digital arena. It's also true in other policy area, like climate policy, for example. So there's a couple of different tracks running in parallel, which again will determine how realistic the ambitions of the tech sovereignty package can actually be in practice. If you see some of the simplification objectives are around simplifying the way GDPR is interpreted. How might that play out in the tech sovereignty context? Those two will have to reconcile at some point.
And that was Niall Kitson speaking with Isabelle Roccia, Managing Director for Europe at the International Association of Privacy Professionals.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Do check out some of the other stories that we have on the website for you, including
the Italian competition regulator takes on Apple. We have a record year for e-waste recycling, and Jeff Bezos gets back into business with an AI startup.
All of those stories and more on the website right now at techessential.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new podcast for you. In the meantime, please do share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them to look up for Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify or YouTube or wherever they get their podcast. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, thanks for listening. Take care.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.